a song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Season 8, Episode 8, our final song on the Who Do We Think We Are album from Deep Purple. This, the only bonus track, never destined to be released, as we will find out in just a moment. But I remember I first found this song on a compilation album called Powerhouse. It also had Cry Free on it. We've talked about that. And really enjoyed that. There's also a really good live version of Hush with Ian Gillan singing on that from, back in the early days of Mark II. But yeah, this is a really interesting song, very different sound for Deep Purple. And we get the return of the harmonica, which is always interesting. When you think about rock bands, you don't think about harmonica too much. When you think of blues, you might think of harmonica. And of course, Deep Purple is a somewhat blues-based rock band. So there you go. It does make sense on the occasional song to bring out the old mouth organ. But you know what? Speaking of mouths, let's hear it from the mouth himself as we go back to Rockline. This would be the episode where they were on to promote the Nobody's Perfect live album that had come out from the House of Blue Light tour. Here we get all four members that were there, except for Richie, who doesn't usually attend those kind of interviews. And someone calls in and asks about Painted Horse.
And we moved to Carl now, still in Florida. He's in Jacksonville, though, and our station there is Rock 105. Hey,
Hello?
Carl.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on the air. Let's go.
One thing I'd like to say, it's great having the world's greatest heavy rock band together again with members that have some virtuoso ability to play their axe, for one thing. And number two, a polyphonic synthesizer will never blow away that great Hammond sound that John's got.
Thank you, sir.
And then another thing, I've noticed that back in the mid-'70s, you had some singles that were on the B-side of that, like Painted Horse and When a Blind Man Cries. And I was wondering, are you guys going to do any of those songs on this concert tour?
Oh, the truth is about those songs that they were... Sorry, John, do you want to answer that? The truth is about those songs that they were B-sides. In fact, Painted Horse was never destined to be released. And I think it was only released by the whim of our ex-management on a live, rare and undiluted
and unfinished
and slightly diseased album. And I think that I personally like the song, but as usual I was in a minority on that. But no, these are sort of unfinished little sort of insights into the almost purple, I think, of the past.
So there you have it. And I always thought the album that he was referring to was Powerhouse, because at the time that this Rockline had come out, that was the only place I knew of. Of course, that was included in the anniversary edition that Roger Glover remixed, and that's what we're going to be listening to. But there were a couple of 3-song 45s that came out called New Live and Rare and New Live and Rare 2. And one of them features Painted Horse, When a Blind Man Cries, and on the flip side, you get a live version of Black Knight. So yes, it actually did come out on a new and live disc, but they are 45s, and those came out under Purple Records. I'm sure that some other company like EMI or whatever probably released them, maybe Harvest, but the ones that I have are on the Purple Records label, and they're in pretty good shape. So really glad to have those in my collection. But before we get into our song today, guys, it is Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. I want to take a moment to thank my wonderful patrons. Remember, too, I am recording this about a month ahead of time. So if you have joined the Patreon since the time that I'm recording and before this airs, you may not be included on this list, but I will get you as soon as the first episode I record comes up since you joined. As it stands currently in the $5 Money Talks tier, we have William Rose, Corey Morissette, and Nate. And at the $1 no need to shout tier, Kai Rune Olsen. Thank you guys so much for your support. That really means a lot to me. Is a pretty simple setup. Just kind of me doing all the processing and the recording. I have the occasional guest on, which is always nice. But yeah, just me sitting here with my purple catalog going over the songs. So the fact that it means enough to you guys to give a little bit back really means an awful lot to me. And let's get into the song, because that's why we're here. This is Painted Horse by Deep Purple. Let's just talk about this intro real quick, because there's something very interesting about the guitar tone here. And remember, I'm not a guitar player. I'm a drummer, a perpetually entry-level bass player, and I play some keys. But there's something really interesting about the way that we're getting a sound from Richie. And I remember seeing times where he doesn't use a pick, where he's playing with his fingers. And I have to wonder if that isn't how he's playing this, because I'm not getting the attack of a pick across a string. This is very gentle. And so I wonder if he's maybe picking this with his fingers. It seems very plausible to me. If you guys know for sure, let me know. No speculation, just if you know for sure would be great. If you don't, that's fine. I certainly don't. But I definitely am getting a different sound than I normally hear from Richie. Also, just a nice little gentle riff. I really like it. Then we get a little bit of harmonica. We get some hi-hat tapping from Ian Pace. Very different from the pattern that we get from Woman from Tokyo. Very tight hi-hat. He's playing, very much with the tip of the sticks. You can almost hear that crisp tick with every stick hit. As opposed to Woman from Tokyo, where it's a little bit open, you get a little more of those cymbals connecting with each other, and just a different style of hitting as well. I mean, it's not the same lick that he's playing. Killer harmonica solo. Really like when everybody kicks in too. That just makes it sound really full all of a sudden. But I don't know. This opening just always makes me smile. I love that little lick from Richie and the way that they just let it hang there, and then boom, they come in. And as we're getting into the first verse here, I just want to point out, I love these gentle vocals from Ian Gillan. We talked about this on the Woman from Tokyo episode in that middle section where he was singing very gently. I love that he's not pushing his voice on this, that he's actually singing in a just very relaxed, gentle way. I think it works so well for this song. I think it would have been okay if he sang it with more of a hard edge, but I like that he didn't, and I like the vocal layering that we're about to get here too. Richie and John are really active in the background here, and it does sound similar to the Who Do We Think We Are sessions, but it doesn't sound like the audio is being pushed quite as hard, because I'm not getting that clipping type sound that I've mentioned several times throughout this season. So it does sound similar, like it was recorded around the same time, but it just sounds like this was really maybe didn't get the same final treatment that the rest of the songs did originally. But I think it sounds good. And I really, like all through this song, I really can appreciate Ian's singing style on here. But Richie, especially very active on this. You can hear John really kind of in a groove on this one with Roger in the background. Ian Pace, I should say, pretty straightforward, adding in just some really gentle fills, nothing too crazy. He's really staying tame on this one, which I think, for this song, this kind of music, I think it works. I don't think this really needs, big grandiose fills, and he obviously knew that. What's really interesting about this section here for me, and I could be wrong, but this, I believe, is the only time that Ian ever plays harmonica under his own vocals. We'll find out as the show goes on, because maybe there's something I didn't notice before, certainly possible. But as far as I know, this is the only time he does that. And it sounds really good. I like the way he's kind of having a nice little jam with the guys. What he's playing fits in really well. And maybe that's why Richie's a little bit more active and pushing a little bit harder on this one as opposed to some of the other songs on this album, because he didn't want to compete. Just throwing that out there, very possible. But who knows? Maybe Ian's tracks were added on at the end. I really have no idea. But it does sound very much like the band is together on this song, which I really like, especially considering, what was going on in the band and the tension and, the different scheduled recording times and all of that. It really sounds like a cohesive unit. And I love that the music comes out that way and doesn't really show what the behind the scenes was, that, it's not fragmented. Okay, a lot going on here. Love the trading solos with harmonica and guitar this time instead of the standard organ and guitar. That's a nice change of pace. And again, I mean, Ian's playing great on this, so really the playing doesn't seem any less or that it doesn't compete in any way, because it's right up there. But I did hear in the middle there was a little bit of static. I don't know if that was intentional or just got burned into the recording and they didn't notice it. And they're like, well, that's what we got. Remember, the song wasn't intended to be released, so they may not have cleaned that up on purpose. This to them was probably just something that they were considering. Let's record a demo, maybe. I don't know. But as we heard Ian say, it wasn't destined to be released, so you wouldn't expect it to get all cleaned up. And then, when Roger goes to do the new master of it, and it could be something that the mastering brought out as well, because I don't remember hearing that on the Powerhouse version. But also, again, listening on different equipment. But could just be something the mastering brought out, could be something he said, you know what, this is what we got, so this is part of the record, and that's the way it's going to stay. So anyway, that being the case, that was kind of interesting. But then I love this little part at the end, except that we get a guitar that now all of a sudden is panned slightly more to the left for this last little bit of soloing. I don't know why. It doesn't really make sense to me why now this one part of the guitar lick is separated from the solo and now seems like he's just kind of walking out of the room and just waving goodbye. It's kind of weird to me that it wouldn't sit in the same seat on the audio floor that the rest of the guitar solo does. So there's that. But I love that little lick from Roger, just that da 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 da, and then the band kicks in. Like he does that as a precursor to the band kicking in, and then does another lick as they go back into the song with the full band again. But this section, with just like the bass drum and the hi-hat, really cool. I could almost picture this being the kind of song, and I remember talking about on Backtracks Aerosmith Revisited with Corey, and I think there's a couple times when I've been on the podcast Will Rock with maybe some of the family member wheels, like the solo albums and stuff, where I might have mentioned this too. But there's a song by Aerosmith on the Permanent Vacation album, and it's called Hangman Jury. And this song very much feels like, if you think about, maybe you just kind of imagine people in the South hanging out on the porch on a Sunday, the family's over, they've had their barbecue or whatever, and they're outside, they're just kind of relaxing after the meal. Somebody brings a jug, starts tapping on it, somebody brings out an acoustic guitar or a backpack or a banjo or something like that, and they all just have this kind of fun jam on the porch. And couple people on the stairs, somebody sitting in the ground, with a piece of, like a weed that they pull out of the ground or something, and they're just playing with it. Just like that kind of image is what I think this song could be too. I mean, obviously we're a little more electric driven here because we've got, electric bass, we've got organ, but it just has that kind of like casual Sunday jam on the porch feel to it. And I really like that because that is something that I think is hard to create. I think it's something that just has to come out naturally. And maybe the harmonica being such a dominant instrument is part of why I'm getting that. But even, just the bass drum cymbal kind of feel, like that's something I feel like you would get something similar to that. I don't know. It just kind of has that potential feel to me. Like I said, obviously this is more like somebody heard somebody playing that on a porch and then went and recorded it or was jamming it in the studio with more advanced instruments. So either way, though, really cool song. And if you don't know the song Hangman Jury, really good track. The vocals are so consistent through this too. It's not like he comes in and gets aggressive at any point. He's very straightforward on this song in this zone. And I really like that. I like that they didn't push a big build or anything. The song, it carries along really well as it is. It's a fun jam. It's got some really nice movement in all of the instruments. And to do what they do on a lot of songs and like build up and add more to each verse and make it escalate. I really like that they didn't do that on this. And I love just that almost like not quite sorrowful, but observational gentleness that we have in the lyric here. So a couple of things of note that really stand out to me in this last section is the crash cymbal that we hear on the word boom. I really like that. I've always thought that was really cool. For one, I love the sound of Ian's drums on this album. I think I've mentioned that before, but it sounds like just such a gentle crash cymbal, not like a rock and roll, really I got to hit this hard kind of crash, but just almost as gentle as the vocals themselves. And I've always wondered if he went back and overdubbed that and maybe hit that with a mallet, like a bass drum mallet, with the felt on it as opposed to a wooden stick. Because it doesn't have that, again, it doesn't have that same attack, very much like I was talking about the guitar. Um, that is one thing. And then the other thing that I found really fun is in the transition there when Ian Pace does his drum fill, he just ends on this hi-hat lift and just leaves a little bit of open space. That is so cool. Normally I think we tend to want to fill in all the spaces, but he really lets that stop breathe a little bit. And I like that. I mean, that open and closed hi-hat um, feels like it adds a little bit of finality to it, but it doesn't. It just leaves a bit of breath, and then they kick in again. And I really, really appreciate that. Well, I can't say that I care for that little vomit sound or whatever that is at the end there, but I do appreciate some great harmonica playing. Nice jam from the guys. I like that they just went back to that, kick and hi-hat beat and really just kind of laid back and let Ian shine a little bit on this one. I think it's a great song. And, again, it's one of those decisions that you have to make when you're like, what do we put on the album? What makes the cut and what doesn't? But I'm glad that they at least released this in a couple of ways. Now the 45 version fades out earlier. The Powerhouse version fades out a little bit before this ends. We get maybe 15 or 20 extra seconds here on this remix from Roger, which is great because it's interesting to see how they actually ended it. But it's really fun. And another thing I wanted to point out is I think, and this is just based on how I'm hearing the hi-hat sound, I think Ian Pace is playing both the hi-hat pedal and the kick pedal. I don't think he's hitting it with his stick, the hi-hat, not the kick, because you wouldn't hit a kick with the stick, but not that rhymed. But you would normally hit the hi-hat, but it sounds like he's just using the foot pedal on the hi-hat, just because of the way that they're kind of clanging together and giving a little bit of a different sound. Could be wrong, but that's what I'm hearing. But yeah, this is a great song. I really, from the first time I heard it, and I remember getting the Powerhouse album, I'm pretty sure it was from Car City Classics, which was off of Harper and 9 Mile, I want to say. I can never remember the mile roads for these stores, but I want to say 9 Mile and Record Time was 10 Mile. But anyway, it doesn't exist now. But one thing that was cool about that store is that they had the pricing minus the taxes. So we had back in the day, now I sound like old man yelling at cloud, but back in the day, back in my childhood, tax in Michigan, sales tax was 4%. So the albums were $1.96, I'm sorry, 96 cents or $1.92. And that was really cool because you could just walk in with a dollar bill and get, an album that was 96 cents, not have to dig in your pocket for change. I really appreciated that they did that. But in any case, I remember coming home and just being all excited to listen to it. And the first thing I did was put on Painted Horse, put on Cry Free. And I'm like, wow, these are brand new Deep Purple songs for me. And that, I can't remember if When a Blind Man Cries was on that one or not. But anyway, yeah, really, really special song. Very glad that we get to hear some of these that weren't destined to be released. Like Ian said, the Almost Purple. But then, since they did get released, then they do become part of the catalog and part of the history, even if they aren't part of the catalog proper, meaning intended to be released on a studio album or on a 45, because obviously the band wasn't going to release it. It was a management thing, which is typically the case. That's how a lot of the stuff comes out. But Roger included it on the 25th anniversary, so make sure that you get your copy of that. There's also a good jam and good first day jam on there. And I think I mentioned some stuff for Rat Bat Blue. So go check those out, guys. It's a great album. That will wrap us up for season 8 and the end of Mark II. On our next episode, we begin the Coverdale Hughes entrance into the band and the album Burn and the title track Burn. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.